This podcast contains descriptions of violence against children and adult language and is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Suffer the Little Children, the true crime podcast giving voices back to the victims of child abuse and shining a harsh spotlight on the parents, guardians, and caretakers who silenced them. I'm your host, Lane, and this is episode 140, Judah Morgan Updates. In episodes 87 and 88, I told you the story of 4-year-old Judah Morgan, who spent the first 3.5 years of his life in a foster care kinship placement with his second cousin, Gina Hullett, and her family. Despite multiple warnings from Gina and other family members, Judah was returned to his biological parents, Morgan and Mary Yoder, in April of 2021. 6 months later, he was dead, and Alan and Mary were both arrested. In this episode, I'll provide you with the many updates that have transpired since I last talked about Judah's case. You'll also hear my recent conversation with Judah's real mom, Gina Hollett, who continues to push for change in the name of the curly-haired boy she loved like her own. This is the Judah Morgan Update episode. I'd like to give a quick shout-out to my newest patrons, Linda G. from Reykjanes, Iceland, and Brittany H. from Parts Unknown. Thank you so much for your support. To make a pledge, you can visit patreon.com/stlcpod. With that, I'll get right into the episode. I originally told you the story of 4-year-old Judah Morgan in episodes 87 and 88 back in November of 2021. Judah was a bright, energetic, joyful little boy who learned quickly and loved tractors, riding his new bike, Garfield, hats of all kinds, Lightning McQueen, jumping in puddles, playing at the park, fishing with his daddy, singing and dancing, and posing for photos. Judah was removed from the custody of his biological parents, Mary Yoder and Alan Morgan, when he was an infant, and placed into the home of his second cousin, Gina Hollett, and her family. The Holletts bonded with Judah during the nearly 4 years he lived with them, and they intended to adopt him and were told multiple times that they would soon be able to. Judah called Gina and Phil Mommy and Daddy, and their 3 adult children considered Judah their baby brother. Unfortunately, due to glaring mistakes made by Indiana's LaPorte County Department of Child Services, just before Judah turned 4, he was returned to Mary and Alan's care for a trial visit, supposedly 6 months in length, starting in April of 2021. That 6-month visit was not what it seemed. DCS actually closed Judah's case after just 2 months, meaning they stopped following up with the family. Because Judah had never bonded with his biological parents, who had 3 other children by that time, plus 1 on the way, he became the couple's scapegoat, taking the brunt of their anger and frustration. In October of 2021, Mary was admitted to the hospital to give birth to her 5th child, who was already arranged to be adopted by another couple. The following day, Alan held a birthday party for one of his younger sons, during which he claimed Judah was with a friend of Mary's. This, however, was untrue. Judah was restrained in the family's basement. In the early morning hours of October 11, 2021, police responded to 911 calls placed by both Mary from the hospital and the new baby's adoptive mother, who reported an unconscious 4-year-old at Mary's home address. In the filth-ridden home, officers found no adults, 3 sleeping children, and an emaciated dog in a cage. They also found Judah's bruised, naked body in a bedroom, covered in a blanket, cool to the touch, and unresponsive. Judah was pronounced dead at the scene at 3:57 a.m. In the basement, police found various pieces of duct tape, a toddler potty, a blanket with duct tape stuck to it, and various other items that led them to believe Judah had been confined and restrained in the basement. After a short manhunt, Alan Morgan was captured. both he and Mary Yoder were arrested in connection with Judah's murder. Mary was charged with felony neglect of a dependent resulting in death, felony neglect of a dependent with cruel confinement, misdemeanor failure to report, and misdemeanor cruelty to an animal. Allen faced charges of felony first-degree murder, 5 counts of felony neglect of a dependent, and a misdemeanor count of cruelty to an animal. Since I last updated Judah's story in December of 2021, there have been plenty of updates to the legal case against Mary and Allen, as well as to Judah's story overall. There are just too many to fit into one of my regular update episodes where I talk about multiple cases, so today I'll be talking about all of Judah's updates with his real mommy, Gina Hollett, with some input from her husband, Phil. First, I'll give you a quick synopsis of the updates. On March 10, 2022, just 5 months after Judah's death, Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb signed into law House Enrolled Act 1247, which requires the state DCS to disclose more details, including any family history with DCS, as well as more carefully analyze the situation whenever a child dies from abuse or neglect. That bill came into effect on July 1, 2022. The governor also signed Senate Bill 410, which is officially called Judah's Law, and gives unlicensed caregivers like Gina the right to intervene as a party in court in cases like Judah's involving a child in need of services, or CHINS matter. Then, in September of 2022, Allen accepted a plea agreement, pleading guilty to murder, battery, and felony resisting law enforcement in a separate case that happened in August. Other charges from that case, including drug possession, reckless driving, and operating a vehicle while under the influence, as well as neglect charges regarding Judah, were dropped. In exchange for Allen's guilty plea, the possibility of a sentence of life without parole was taken off the table. The plea agreement left the length of Allen's sentence up to the judge's discretion. Prior to Allen's sentencing, Mary was hit with 2 additional counts of neglect and a new count of domestic battery to a person under 14. These new charges came about due to surveillance video from the home, recorded on October 6, 2021, that showed Mary grabbing another of her sons by his arm and throwing him on the floor. From there, she kicked him, grabbed his arm again, yanked him around, dropped him, and kicked him several more times before the little boy got up and ran, crying, to his bedroom. The neglect charges stemmed from 2 incidents caught on camera showing Mary and Allen leaving Judah home alone, once for 2 hours, the second time for 1 hour and 45 minutes. Video from October 6th showed Allen and Mary leaving the house with all of their children except Judah. When they returned home, the video showed Judah emerging naked from the basement and walking into the bathroom, followed by Mary and Allen. At the same hearing where she was hit with the new charges, Mary was also found competent to stand trial. Allen's sentencing hearing took place on November 29, 2022. Judah's foster family filled the courtroom, showing support for the little boy they loved like their own. The Hullett family cried as LaPorte County investigator Jacob Koch described the video surveillance footage that showed Allen abusing Judah repeatedly, both physically and psychologically, in the days before his death. One such incident was described in the Fulton County Post, which stated that Allen held Judah off the floor by his throat at Allen's eye level, punched him in the stomach more than 12 times, and then dropped him to the floor. Allen was seen punching Judah at least 13 times on October 7, 2021, at least 15 times the following day, as well as kicking and throwing him, and later he was seen carrying Judah's lifeless body upstairs from the basement and then carrying out internet searches on how to perform CPR on a toddler. Forensic pathologist Dr. John Fezco testified that Judah, who weighed 36 pounds during his autopsy, was within the range of malnourishment. X-rays showed a partially healed fracture to his collarbone, and Judah also had injuries from head to toe, including internal bleeding, trauma to his back and abdomen, and bleeding on the brain. The pathologist, who had worked in the field for 28 years, said, "This ranks up among the worst blunt force trauma in my career." Gina's daughter, Madison, provided the judge with a victim impact statement in which she wrote in part, "Judah was the best baby brother I never knew I needed, the brightest light I have ever and will ever know. The day he was born, his life engulfed me. For all that he was, he should not be nothing now. He should not be just ash." Madison wrote about the trauma the family suffered after seeing Judah's injuries at his funeral, adding, "I never knew what a walk alone down the darkest road of tragedy would feel like until the day we heard he was murdered. I will never unsee the lifeless body of a starved, bruised little boy I once called my Bubba. Gina spoke on behalf of her family at the hearing, advocating for Alan, her first cousin, to receive a sentence of life without parole or 66 years without parole. In her victim impact statement, Gina said of Judah, "It haunts us to know the pain and fear he went through, and I am certain he wondered why his real mommy and daddy weren't there to save him. It was made very clear we would have loved to keep Judah and would have joyfully taken him back if he was unwanted. Ultimately, there is no real justice for Judah, but we pray for some sense of it. The only solace we have is knowing that Judah is no longer suffering." During the hearing, LaPorte Circuit Judge Thomas Alavizos sentenced Alan to 63 years for murder and 7 years for the other charges. The terms are to be served consecutively, and Alan must serve at least 75% of that sentence before being eligible for parole, at which time he will be in his 80s. He was credited for 416 days time served. The judge cited Alan's role as his son's caregiver, Judah's young age, the torture involved in his death, the fact that other children witnessed that torture, and Alan's lack of remorse, saying that Alan deserved a lengthy sentence. Alan chose not to make a statement during the hearing, which clearly upset the judge, who said, "I hope someday he is remorseful, and he carries that remorse to his grave." After the hearing, Gina said she believed Alan's sentence was fair but awaited Mary's trial, which was at the time scheduled for January, but later pushed back to September of this year. Now 30 years old, Alan is currently incarcerated in the Miami Correctional Level 3 facility in Bunker Hill, Indiana. His projected release date is listed as October 8, 2073. In late December, Alan notified the courts of his intention to appeal his 70-year sentence with the help of public defender Jennifer Cady, who filed a motion for extension of time to file a brief in March, which was approved. The appeal has yet to be decided. On January 5, 2023, Gina, representing the estate of Judah Morgan and represented by attorney Charles Rice, filed a lawsuit against her cousin Alan Morgan. The lawsuit said that because of the reckless, careless, negligent, and wrongful acts and omissions of other persons and the intentional acts of Alan Morgan, Judah was beaten, tortured, and eventually murdered on October 11, 2021. It seeks judgment against Alan, including an unspecified amount of monetary damages as well as attorney fees. The next court date in the lawsuit is scheduled for the end of April. Gina also filed a tort notice against DCS and the LaPorte County Office of Child Services, notifying them of her intent to sue and saying in the complaint, "DCS is charged with overseeing the protection of Hoosier children such as Judah. DCS is the primary state agency responsible for receiving and assessing reports of alleged child abuse and neglect. DCS failed to protect Judah and his siblings and failed to properly assess, monitor, and investigate the horrific conditions in the home that DCS was obligated by law to inspect and supervise." The Attorney General's office responded that it investigated the claim and felt settlement is not warranted in this matter, and therefore this claim is denied. Gina gave an interview in February to the Times of Northwest Indiana, during which she described Judah.
Judah was like any other typical child his age. He was very energetic, happy, very, very lovable. He referred to our adult children as his sissies and his big brother. He adored when they came to visit. He loved his dogs. There wasn't anything that Judah didn't love. We would go to the grocery store. He'd say, "Hey, dude," to everybody. It was always, "Hey, dude, hey, dude." He liked trucks, any kind of machinery. His favorite toys were the remote control cars, so he played with those a lot. There's not any specific thing that I could say that I loved about Judah, other than, like I said at the most recent visual, that my favorite memory is that he called me mommy. There's not anything that child would have done to deserve what he got. Judah's Army is going to be his voice for other children in a similar situation that they might be put in, and hopefully we can make changes to prevent anything else further from happening to other children. And that's our biggest goal, is making change so it doesn't happen, so no other child has to lose their life or be hurt, or another parent or foster parent doesn't lose somebody that they love.
Gina also described the last time she saw Judah, which was the day she had to drop him off for the last time. She could not bring herself to tell Judah he wouldn't be coming home with her.
He was squeezing around my neck and he whispered in my ear, he goes, "Mommy, take me home, please." And I had to set him down and turn right around because I didn't want him to see me upset.
Although reports said Mary's defense was attempting to work out a plea agreement, news came out in early March that Mary had decided to go to trial instead of pleading guilty, to everyone's surprise, including the judge. Gina told the Times she had wanted to see Mary plead guilty just to get a resolution to Judah's case, but now she hopes that if a jury convicts Mary, she'll spend more time in prison than she would with a guilty plea. At a hearing in late March, Mary had the audacity to request to be moved from the LaPorte County Jail to a work release program while she awaits trial. Judge Elevizos slapped her request down immediately. On the afternoon of Monday, April 3, 2023, Gina and her family held a peaceful protest outside the LaPorte County DCS office, holding signs that read, "Justice for Judah," "Enough is enough," and "DCFS reform, hold accountable, justice for Judah." They were joined by two friends. DCS was concerned enough about the protest to have their security guards stand outside for 2 hours. On June 10, 2023, Gina and the Justice for Judah Facebook group are planning an event at a park in Knox, Indiana. The park is either pronounced Wythogan or Whitehogan, depending on the source. During the ceremony and potluck luncheon, the group will plant a tree in Judah's honor and scatter Judah's ashes at the base of the tree. I'll include the link to the group and to the event page in the show notes for this episode. Gina is hoping to live stream the event for those who can't attend in person. After this short sponsor break, you'll hear my conversation with Gina Hullett.
Since the episode came out, House Act 1247. Okay.
That one was by Representative Lauer.
And then came Judah's Law. That was the same day, right? I think the governor signed them both the same day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing is I think that bill, I don't know, I need to talk to Representative Lauer on seeing how we can tweak that bill maybe in the future, because I don't believe, a matter of fact, I can almost say with a guarantee that particularly Judah's was incorrect. So that when they came out with the end of the year fatality report, it doesn't say the children's name. It just lists their age, what happened to them, and how many times the hotline was called. Mm-hmm. That part I know for a fact is mistaken, because it says there was only one substantiated call for Judah and that there were only 10 calls made. I can tell you right now, I know for a fact I made at least, if not more than 20 calls myself. And I know Mary's mother called at least 10 to 20 times on her own. So there was at least 30 plus calls made to the line. So I know that part is inaccurate on Judah's section. So hard telling what else, is inaccurate on it.
Yeah.
What are they hiding and why? You got me in connection with Ashley, and she showed me the fatality report, how they do it in Washington, and it is far more clear than the way we have it. They don't give the child's name, they give an initial. The initials, first and last initials, and then how many times the hotline was called, how many checkups were done, in-home checkups on the children. It's just way more informative than the way that Indiana does it.
Yeah, sounds like it. I don't think I saw the one with Hazel on it either, but if there's that much information on that, I don't know. The whole problem to me seems that it's so fractured and there's a different system for every state and sometimes even counties within the state. And if it was more of a federal program where everything was at least kind of the same across the board as far as standards and reporting and that sort of thing, it would be a lot easier to track this sort of stuff.
Right. And I found out, in the past year and a half that when you brought up counties, how it's different in every county. So I assumed that every county in Indiana was the same as far as DCFS regulations and rules. So when they took Judah from us 2 years ago, yesterday, they told me that he was going on a 6-month home trial. That would mean he would be supervised, checked on monthly, every month for 6 months until they close the case. Come to find out, within the past year and a half, we found out that they closed Judah's case out in 2 months. And I've been speaking with different people in different counties in Indiana, and every county is different. One county could be 2 months. One county could be 6 months. In Fort Wayne, one of the girls that I talked to there, it's pretty much regulation that they do home trials for 6 months. Now, down in Indy, they do it for 2 or 3. Here, I guess it depends on whatever they see fit. So they closed Judah's case out in 2 months instead of 6, which by my standards is just ignorant and I don't even know what word I could use to say it nicely, how negligent that was because of the fact that Judah had no bond with them.
Right.
And to think that he's going to be okay without therapy in 2 months is complete bullshit.
Especially with the complaints that were going on that they, of course, don't want to admit. But with
Right.
all of that going on at the same time, oh, yeah, it's fine. Shut it down. It baffles me.
Yeah. So if they would have kept his case open, when I called them, when I texted them in, was it September, when Alan was arrested for drug paraphernalia and all that?
Oh, August. Yep.
If Judah's case was still open, we would have gotten him back and that would have saved his life.
So that was a huge part of why they didn't care about that happening, is because the case was just closed already.
Funny, because they knew his case was closed and their response to me was, "You are no longer part of the case."
Mm-hmm.
Well, A, no shit. And
Right.
B, why give that kind of statement if the case is already closed?
True. It's almost like they just wanted to keep you hanging.
Yeah, I'm no longer part of the case. Well, the case is closed. They failed to, mention that.
Yeah, something has to change there. Especially, I mean, statewide, the standards should be the same. Like you said, in
Right.
Allen County, it's 6 months.
Yep.
And yet in Marion County and LaPorte County, it's 2, maybe 3. It just doesn't seem right. And it should probably be based on the circumstances, meaning
Definitely.
in Judah's case, it should have been 6 months. If they're going to say 6 months, at least give it that long to see how things go, especially considering Mary's pregnant with her 5th child at the time. And how is that going to go well?
Yeah. The largest factor is that Judah had no connection with them. How are you going to think that a child is going to be okay in 2 months with no therapy services or any kind of services whatsoever? And that's what the CASA told me when she's like, I said, I fear for Judah's mental stability. The bond that is created with our family and the fact that they have no bond with him and he has no bond with them. I went through and I even told the judge all of the aftermath effects that it could have on Judah with trust issues, learning disabilities. When you rip a child that young from a bonded home and throw him in with people that he has no bond with, and he knew them, but he didn't really know them. So to think that any child in that circumstance would be okay after 2 months is just ignorant.
There's no way.
The nicest way I can put it, just complete ignorant.
So if he was having accidents or any kind of behavioral issues or any regression, that sort of thing, that would have been why. But they should be able to predict that something like that will happen and take steps to prevent it or give the family support. But to just throw him in there and say, here, you guys deal with it is so negligent.
Right. And that could have even be fixed by allowing us visitation with him.
Yeah. But then, of course, that being up to Mary to say yes or no was, that was all it took.
Yeah. Because in my eyes, they made it seem like it was his fault. And that's probably, maybe he felt that we didn't want him anymore. Yeah. Maybe that was causing his accidents or, and hard knowing what they told him. I know the type of people that they are. And, I mean, if they'll do it when they were just doing visits where they would tell Judah that I'm a stupid fat bitch, God knows what they're saying to him when nobody else is listening.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, the fact that they resented you for caring about him, well, they didn't.
Yeah, because he was a possession. That's all he was. He was a possession. That's why, I mean, you saw the text messages to whoever she messaged about not wanting him. Then why not just give him back to me? Especially, and I think I've had this discussion with Phil, and although I despise Alan, I hope he gets what he deserves where he's at, and I hope he suffers for as long as possible. I have more animosity towards Mary, and I think the more I think about it, I think the reason why is because I had no contact with Alan at the time. He had blocked me. No, I had blocked him on Facebook. He in turn blocked me. We didn't have each other's cell phone numbers, whereas Mary had not blocked me. I was messaging her repetitively for those 6 months. Can we see Judah? Can we bring Judah's toys? Do you guys need anything? Do you need help? Nothing. She could have very easily responded to any of those messages and said, I can't do this. Can you come get Judah? I can't do this. Can you help me with the kids? And when I talked to her when she was in jail, I asked her, why didn't you call me? And she's like, well, I thought you hated me. I said, you know me. And you know it does not matter what my feelings are towards you. If you would have called me and said that the boys were in trouble and that you needed to get out of there, me and Phil would have stopped what we were doing immediately and went over and helped you.
Right. It's like she couldn't see it from someone's point of view who actually has empathy to other people. She just thought, how would she?
And she had no empathy. All she cared about at the time was Alan and herself.
I wonder how they're feeling about each other these days.
Well, apparently when we had the sentencing for Alan, I don't know who he had said it to, but the judge had made a comment about Alan blamed everybody aside from himself. And then he went through and he kind of said in so many words that Alan blamed me, that Alan blamed DCS, and that Alan blamed Mary. So apparently he had made a statement at some point in time that Mary pushed him in some manner to do it. So I don't think they have very many good feelings towards each other at this time.
How did he try to justify blaming you? What on earth could he say?
Without saying too much, because there is a between Mary's trial if it does go through, and I want DCS to pay somehow. So I'm not sure how much I can say on this, but so from what I've heard or what I've gathered from the things that I have heard, they both blamed me for, I think it was more of an excuse. Judah was delayed supposedly, and Judah was behind, and Judah should have been in preschool, and that's all my fault, and that I didn't take Judah out of the house other than to go for visits, which you can tell by the pictures he was out of the house all the time.
Yeah.
That basically I delayed him in some form or manner, and that they had to make up for it, and that's what caused them frustration, essentially, is what I gathered from the information that I've got. Which is complete bullshit. It's all completely an excuse. Judah was exactly where he should have been at his age, if not a little bit advanced. He knew his 5 basic colors. He could count to 10. Mostly we made it a game out of everything, so he had fun doing it. If he lost any of that when he was there, it was because he was afraid.
Of course. Yeah. And also probably not stimulated at all, even at the beginning. I can't imagine they had a lot of time to sit and interact with individually and teach a child when they were running around taking care of 4 of them at the time. I mean, Mary had plenty of time to make TikToks about how hard it is to have all these boys, but...
And the thing is even before all this happened, I saw how Mary would have DY when he was first born. She would have MY help change his diaper. This is a child taking care of another child. The oldest child was the babysitter. That's the child that kept the other children, occupied and out of trouble. And so they weren't their parenting skills, they just weren't parents. MY even made a statement, and I heard it. He made it to his grandmother, to Mary's mother. And I was sitting there when it was made, and he said, I can parent better than my parents can parent. And that's a lot coming from a 7. At the time, he was 7 when he made the statement.
No kidding. I know some people, they talk about how proud they are that their kid's so independent at this young age, but that's neglect. This is the kind of thing that you have to watch out for. They shouldn't be doing that. They should be playing and learning. And
I also found out that MY, the oldest child, was... So when the new school year started for 2021, I don't know if he was pulled from school or if he just wasn't registered for that year. At the time of Judah's death, that child was not in school. And I think it was because of the 1 or 2 months prior to that, when school did start. I don't think they wanted to send him because they knew that he might repeat something that's going on at home. So he wasn't even in school.
And they didn't have him registered for homeschooling or anything.
No.
The state was going to catch up with them at some point, one way or the other. But that is a shame that wasn't followed up on, because that's a whole month he went without being in school. Right. That the state is aware this child is alive and should be attending school at that time. There's got to be more oversight, especially when DCS has been involved with the family for years at that point.
Yep. And they're still currently trying to hide things. I also found out through several resources that MY, I believe it was about a month and a half to 2 months ago, he had brought a BB gun to school.
Oh, no.
And threatened to shoot or kill the substitute teacher because his teacher was out on maternity leave. And he wanted that teacher to come back. He did not like the substitute. So apparently he had made a threat. I don't know if it was to shoot or to kill the substitute until his teacher came back. But the fact that this child's been through the trauma that he's been through, knowing what Judah went through, that child should not have a BB gun, let alone have access to bring it to school. And not, he still has an open DCS case, and DCS is not doing anything about it. He is with Mary's mother. Okay,
so that's who he was with for a while before, right?
Yep. So he's back with her, and the other 2 they're together. Okay. I don't know what I can say on that publicly yet, but...
That's okay. Yeah. That's really sad and scary. That poor kid having those kind of feelings and knowing, well, here's a way to alleviate these feelings. I wonder where he learned that kind of anger.
Yeah, you could imagine.
Right.
But I fear for him the most because he was the older one. He knew, he was aware of what was going on, where the other boys are so much younger. They were aware of it at the time, but I think they've kind of gradually forgotten about it.
Oh, I hope.
I'm sure they have triggers, but I believe that right now where they are safe, they are happy, and they're healthy. They're extremely happy and extremely healthy.
Oh,
So
good.
they're doing immensely better from what I've been told.
Thank God. I mean, yeah, trauma can start manifesting in infancy, but hopefully with the right support and a loving family raising them, that'll, at least be mitigated for the most part.
Yep. I do get pictures periodically, so I'm in connection with the person who has them, and from my understanding, they are doing a lot better where DY was having certain triggers and night terrors and whatnot, but with a lot of therapy, they're working through it. So, from my understanding, he's doing a lot better.
That's awesome. I just hope the best for all of them. It's too much for a little kid to try to process, but especially one who's 7 at the time, where you can remember things going forward and it really has an effect on him. So I just hope he gets the help he needs too.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to get it because of the services that Indiana provides. When I look on Facebook on these Indiana adoption website or Facebook groups and other groups, I see people all the time saying that they're dropping their license or the services that these children need are not being provided. And that's my biggest fear with him is that the services aren't being provided because without that therapy, he's not going to be a healthy, productive part of society as he ages. I fear he may be into some trouble as he gets older.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag, bringing a BB gun to school. I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg. The state has to do better. If the kids are the future, which clearly they are, then, we should be investing in them.
Right.
So we talked a little bit about Alan's plea agreement. When did you find out that was happening?
I think it was the month prior to his sentencing is when he said he was going to enter in a plea agreement. I think that's why Judge Alavisos made the statement because Alan had no remorse and he pled guilty at the very last minute when he knew there was evidence against him and the video and things like that. Then I'm in trouble, so I better admit it.
We didn't know about the video early on, right? I don't remember there being anything about surveillance video.
I did, but I wasn't. I had to watch what I could say and what I couldn't say.
Right.
I knew they had surveillance in their home. So the inside of the home has surveillance cameras where it would take still shots.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime there was motion, it would take a picture. So I'm assuming that whatever they retrieved, the motion of the camera picked it up repetitively to where it ended up, they could piece it together.
Right.
Yeah, they only had live feed outside. So
is there any reason that you know of that they would have cameras inside the house?
The day that we found out Judah was gone, I spoke with Alan's mother, and she had told me when I asked her that she thought that Alan was growing marijuana on the property, and that's why he had him up to see who was coming and going and to watch out for police. If they pulled in, then he would see it.
It's so weird how often surveillance cameras inside come up in these stories. Because I don't know people who have it in their house normally, but when it comes to people who abuse their kids, it seems to be common, which is really odd.
Like, it's not bad enough you're doing what you're doing, but you're stupid enough to do it in front of your camera, not thinking that anybody's going to ever see it.
It's like telling on yourself in HD, which is, great when it comes to punishment, but just so strange as a practice.
I'm definitely glad that they were ignorant enough to have it in there because of it gave a little bit more of light to what happened to Judah, even though we didn't really need to know. It kind of, in a weird way, put it all together, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having so many unanswered questions, even though there still are 1,000 unanswered questions, it just kind of pieced it together, what happened to where we kind of understood it more. It was horrible. I'm glad that the judge decided not to show those. Although when the prosecuting attorney did turn with one of the photographs, apparently my son and one of the other attendees, one of our friends that came part of Judah's army. So my son and this particular person had saw part of the picture. And I guess my son has been very bothered by it. He won't tell me what it was, but he said he did see it.
And that's got to be so traumatizing for him. He's early 20s, right? And that was his little brother.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry that happened. I'm glad they didn't show the videos too. I know it was hard enough hearing what happened. They only put a little bit in the news, which is probably a good thing, but I'm sure you guys heard an awful lot.
Yeah.
Again, it's good in a way that it was captured in that both of them were implicated strongly, obviously, and the additional charges against Mary and that sort of thing.
Right.
But I'm sorry you had to hear it.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about Mary's trial if she does go to trial, because if I have to testify, I'm not going to be allowed in the courtroom,
Mm-hmm.
which means that I'm not going to be able to be next to my family, which is going to be hard for me and hard for them. So I
Yeah.
kind of hope that she doesn't go to trial, but I have
Yeah.
some weird feeling that if she does go to trial, that she'll get the maximum amount of time. Now, if she were to plea, she might get less. I'm hoping for at least 40 years. If she does not get 40 years, I'm not going to be happy. Just for the felony, one count is 20 to 40 years.
I know it would be a weight off of you just to have that plea in there and not have to endure the trial. But yeah, it's hard to say which would be better because it seems like they let these people off so easily with plea deals just too many times.
Yeah. Alan's I was happy with.
Oh, good.
70 years. By the time he gets out, I think he'll die in there. I just want him to suffer. I don't want him to die immediately. And this, I've said it before to people, and a lot of people might think it sounds evil. These are my feelings. If I don't care if he gets shanked, sewn up, shanked again, sewn up, shanked again. What happened to Judah was, had he died in a car accident, we would be just as upset and just as sad and miss him just as much. But how he died, I have absolutely no feelings for Alan and Mary other than disgust and hate, and I hope that they will suffer
Yeah, and
as
that's
much
totally
as possible.
understandable. People talk about forgiveness, and that's great if someone can forgive, but it is so understandable if you can't, because these pictures play in your head 24/7, undoubtedly.
Yeah, and I even, so the person who installed their video surveillance, his girlfriend had sent me some of the photos early on, within the 6 months after Judah died, and so I do have some of those images, and they're on my phone, and it's hard to scroll past them to find other photos that I can post in Judah's group. I zoom past them as much as possible, but I don't have the feeling to delete them yet. I don't know why, but yeah, they're horrible. And there's one picture with Judah sitting on a couch and he's got two black eyes.
Oh,
There's one picture you can see Mary and Alan coming out of the boys' room, and you can see disgust on their face. You can tell just by their body character, the hatefulness that they have in their eyes. You can tell that they're yelling, and Judah is standing at the bottom of the frame of the picture. They're coming out of the boys' room, and Judah's standing there clenching his fist. And so you can tell just in that picture that how afraid he was.
oh God.
Yeah.
I'll pause here for another quick sponsor break.
I'm glad that you have so much support. You've got so many people on your side. I can't imagine if you had to do this alone.
Yeah, I think that's helped us a lot. Without the love and the generosity that everybody has shown us, I don't know where we would be, just because it's restored our faith in humanity because of the act that Alan and Mary committed. You lose that. I thought that I was just hearing all this stuff, how many children are dying all the time. I thought that it was just hitting me now after Judah passed. But when I look back on my memories every day, my memories pop up on my Facebook, and almost every day throughout those memories, I'm posting about children dying, and I didn't even realize it.
It hit home for you, unfortunately, in a very personal way. It's good that you've been aware all this time. It just sucks that you had to actually experience it. That you're speaking from a place of experience when you're advocating for Judah. I'm sorry. I can't tell you enough. My heart breaks every time I see one of his pictures. I know how much you miss him, and it's hard for me to see, let alone I can't imagine how it is for you and Phil and the kids.
Yeah. That's the weird thing, is we're all, I guess it's not weird. I guess it's natural, but we're all mourning in a complete different way. So we were supposed to go to an Easter egg hunt. We donated a piñata filled with candy today to one of our friends who are affiliated with a biker club, and they held a really nice Easter egg hunt for the kids today. And we volunteered to help with it, but then we kind of backed out at the last minute because so although it brings us joy to watch other children laughing and playing and having fun, it brings us immense joy, but it's also hard in the same sense because Judah's not there with them. Judah should be there with them, having fun and playing and getting Easter eggs. So it makes it hard for us to want to participate in things where children are involved. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place in that sense.
Yeah, of course.
Because we want to do these things, and we love kids, all kids. We love all kids. When we did the St. Patty's Day parade, I bought $30-40 worth of candy. And I'm throwing, the candy out, almost knocking kids out with it. And I turn around, I had to apologize about 50 times, but I turn around and we're almost out of candy. And I look at Phil and he's got 2 handfuls of candy, handing it to one child. I said, that's why we run out. That's why the kids at the other end of the line don't get any, because you're giving one kid 50 pieces of candy. That's how he's always been through ever since I've known him. Every child we come across, it's hard, but we try to do what we can, but it's definitely hard.
Oh, yeah.
Kyle is in a relationship, a healthy, good relationship. His girlfriend has 3 children, a set of twins that are 2 and a 3-year-old. And Kyle is attached to them. And we recently have spent more time with them and got attached to them. So I think that's Kyle's way of healing, because one of the children has curly hair like Judah did. And Kyle's pretty attached to that particular child. He loves all 3 of them, but that particular child he's kind of latched on to. And I had to bite my tongue quite a few times, because when we're with a couple of my friends, one of my friends is a child advocate, but she also is a foster parent. And when we get to talking, it's always about, what's going on with these kids and what can we do and what needs to change. And one of the times Kyle was sitting there, and this particular foster parent recently had to return a child to her bio parent. And it broke her heart, because we knew exactly what she was going through. This child she got when she was 3 months old, and the child was almost a year and a half. She had to give her back, and they were attached and bonded with the child. And it broke her heart, and it broke mine and Phil's heart to see that her and her husband were going through that pain that we went through when we had to turn Judah over, and the fear of not knowing what's next.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And Kyle was sitting there, and he got livid. He's like, where's this person live? And it just really pulled at his heart, because he even made a statement. He said, I'm not going to have another fucking dead child tattooed on my arm. He's so hurt that he's angry about it, which is the position I'm in. I'm so hurt that I'm angry. I don't have time to cry or to mourn about it, because I'm so filled with anger and hate right now.
Sure, of course. There's got to be so many different stages and so many ways to grieve. And I can't imagine anyone faulting you for feeling that way.
Yeah. And Madison, she gets on and she makes her TikToks. She's vocal like I am. Whereas our other daughter, Caitlin, she kind of thinks that people think that we only have 2 children because she's stepped back, because it's hard for her to look at Judah's pictures, same as Phil. She's kind of dealing with it the same way Phil is, where she doesn't want to look at Judah's pictures because there's so many emotions there. And to be around other kids is hard on her. So she just kind of steps back and is dealing with it in her own way. But she's still definitely our daughter, and she still definitely loved Judah. And just because I'm a big mouth and I have to push and get this out there that, this is going on. I told her, this doesn't mean that you didn't love Judah, that you weren't his sissy. And if people don't understand that you have to do this your way, and you have to heal in your own way, then piss on them. I mean, if they don't understand, then obviously they don't care enough to understand.
If they haven't had to deal with it themselves, then I'm sure they would understand if it was their own life. But that's the problem with a lot of people. They just don't have the ability to put themselves in someone else's shoes. So, yeah.
I even got to the point where I told my therapist, I think that I'm losing my empathy, because typically I'm a very empathic person. If, somebody is upset or hurt about something, my eyes will swell up with tears. That's just because I genuinely care about people. But since this has happened, I've started to lose that little by little. As time goes on, I'm losing it. And I only know that because somebody could say something that typically would hurt my feelings or bother me, and it just does. I don't care anymore. It doesn't affect me the same way. Or if somebody's, getting emotional or something, and I hate to say it, and I hate to make it sound like I don't care, but there are times where I just don't care. And it hurts me, because that's not the person I am. I do care about things, but this has made me start to gradually lose that.
I'm sure you've got a lot of things going on, and more likely than not, depression and things like that are among them. So it's only natural you're going to have different waves of feelings and different ability to cope with things. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's part of it. Part of coping with it is having to kind of turn yourself off at some point. How much pain can you take?
Yeah. And then that's why I told my therapist too, which I haven't seen in several months now. But I told her too that I was having, I think it was dissociation episodes, where I would be sitting on the front porch, drinking a cup of coffee, smoking my cancer sticks, and just completely space off. I was there, but I felt like I was in somebody else's body. Like I knew what was going on in front of me, but it wasn't real. It didn't feel real. if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah.
So I think when I looked it up, it said something about dissociation or something to that effect. And she said that's a normal part of trauma. I don't even know how to explain it. It just didn't feel like I was in my own body. It was like I was looking through somebody else's eyes is the best way I can explain it.
It's got to be your body's trauma response. Like, you know what? Just shut it down. You got to get out of here for a bit. How did you do after the whole sentencing thing and having to deal with hearing all of that? You and Madison both gave victim impact statements?
No, we were told that we could do an impact statement. They had notified me via email that I could give the family impact statement, that they didn't want all of us to give one. Okay. So I had the kids write one, and they told me that I could not read the kids' as they didn't want me up there too long, that they would make a copy of it and give it to the judge, and the judge could read it. So then I wrote one for Phil and I, and basically the whole family. And Phil gave me his feelings. I put that in there. And we just mushed it all together, and I read the statement. And then afterwards, they're like, well, is there anybody else who wants to give an impact statement? The kids could have got up there and did it. So that was kind of irritating because I don't think it would have altered Alan's sentencing, but I think it would have been prudent for the judge to actually hear and see how it's affected our kids. Yeah, I think it's affected all three of our kids so immensely that it's going to be with them for a very long time. It affects their work, their day-to-day lives, all in different ways. So yeah, sure. I think it's going to be quite a long time until they get back to who they wanted to be.
It won't never happen.
Yeah, I'm sure. It seems like it would be something that would change something fundamentally about you. So even if you can get back to normal, quote unquote, whatever that is, it's still going to be a different normal, because there's a before and there's an after.
Right. And there's effects in between. So yeah.
It's unspeakable. So I'm glad that you do speak about it, because I think it's so important for people to know how this affects families, and it puts it into a context where, hey, this is a real family. Here's what they're dealing with, so it's not just, I'm going to comment on something online and just say something flippant about it. This is a real family. I can't tell you how many times I've typed that sentence on Facebook and comments on YouTube. And remember, this is a real family. It's so frustrating that people don't seem to understand that a lot of the time.
Yeah, because it's not slap them in the face. Right. And I think the last time Phil and I were at the State House, I kind of made a statement to that effect, to some of the people that work up there. What if it were your child or one of your family members? Mm-hmm. When it hits you in the face, what is it going to cost you? Braylon Urington, she helps us a lot with the legislation down there, and she's a great child advocate. I've told her several times, why do we have to beg to save these kids? I mean, it should be kind of like, this is stupid. Why can't you do something to fix it? It's not that hard to fix. Really, I don't think it is. I know that there's a lot of legal. So within DCS, they have reunification at all cost and family preservation. We told them when we were at State House last, there is no family preservation when there's a child that is lost. Right. Where's the family then?
It's who did the child grow up with? Who was Judah's family? Who was his mommy and who was his daddy? There's no question that it wasn't Mary and it wasn't Alan.
Right.
But I'm glad that you have decided to, I know you have the lawsuit against Alan in particular.
Well, I know our attorney's trying to get Judah's file from DCS, but they will not turn it over because Mary's trial has not. So since there's still an open investigation, they will not hand over Judah's case file.
Yeah, I guess there's also the government immunity portion. I don't know how much that's going to play into whether or not DCS can be held accountable, but that's one thing that really has to change.
Yeah, definitely. And I keep hearing, well, the judge is only going by what DCS told him. Well, the judge also heard what I told him. The judges don't see these kids. I think I posted in Judah's group one of the emails that I sent out. I sent an email out to Terry Stigdon, which is the director for Indiana DCS. And that email was ignored. I emailed the head of LaPorte County office. I went up the chain and emailed everybody, telling them these are the things that are going on. These are the things that Judah comes home from visits and tells us, things that Judah's therapist was telling us. You can't just take what DCS says is gold and think that that's 100% the truth. You need to look outside the box and talk to other people. And unfortunately, in Judah's case, even the CASA spoke on behalf of Mary and Alan. Instead of speaking on what's the best interest for Judah, she spoke when we had court and they said, yep, Judah's going to go live with Mary and Alan. her statement to the judge when the judge asked her opinion was, well, Mary and Elle are making significant changes, so they're doing really well. She did not say jack shit about Judah or the bond that he had with us or what was in his best interest. It was nothing about what was in his best interest, and that's her job.
That is exactly what she's there for. She's his court-appointed special advocate, which means advocate for the child, not for the bio parents who may or may not be making surface-level improvements.
Right. And she has immunity, so
I imagine DCS does as well. I mean, it's hard to imagine that they would even consider holding them accountable.
it seemed like every time that we tried to reach out to anybody and everybody to try to help them or help the kids, it was shut down.
They were just so hell-bent on that reunification working out and them getting their happy ending that they just ignored everything that pointed towards the fact that there couldn't have been one. I get angrier the more I hear because it's just so unnecessary and it didn't have to happen.
Yep.
So I see why you have this fire under you and why you work so hard to try to change things. And I mean, you've done so much already, just getting the legislation passed in such a short time, which is amazing because usually it takes a whole lot longer than that. So, I mean, standing ovation for you guys for pushing that so hard. And I know a lot more needs to change. So, I mean, anything that I can do to help, and I'm more than happy to help keep Judah's face out there. And I will never stop saying his name and telling people about him because it's so important that this kind of a lesson is learned and that it actually comes to something good.
Yeah.
What we're afraid of is people just forgetting about it. We're never going to forget about it.
Kyle had made a comment to us before, and he said something to the effect, I'm probably going to mess it up, but he said something to the effect of, when we lose people, they're not really gone. The last time that we say their name is when they're really gone. So the more that we say Judah's name, the more that people hear his name, the more that they say his name, that makes him still here in a sense.
Yes. Definitely.
I know I botched it, but essentially that's what he was trying to tell me, that the more that people say Judah's name, it brings him to life in a certain sense.
It keeps his memory alive at least, and he certainly deserves that, and you guys all deserve to have the good memories that you have of him. So I love what you're doing with the page and that you're constantly posting photos and videos of him. It's amazing, and so many people are learning who he is and get to see a little bit about who he was and how much you loved him, that his memory is going to live on forever.
Yeah, and it's very important. I'm so glad. I feel like I have 2 or 3 phones that are broken, and I need to retrieve. There's pictures on there that I haven't seen in quite some time, and I've not posted on Judah's page because I can't get them to charge so I can pull them up. But it's important, I think, for everybody. If you have a child or a grandchild or somebody you love, take as many pictures or videos as you can, because when they're gone, that's all you have left. You have their memories, but those pictures and the videos help. You can still hear their voice. You can still see their face.
Yeah. And then you can pass that on to other people who never even met them. And, I can't help but feel like in a small way, I knew him because you post these beautiful videos of him and he's just dancing around and just being a little character. And we get to see this little bit of him it's so special to have that. And that's so incredible to have such a wealth of those photos and videos and the moments that you got to capture with him riding his bike and his little hey dude and all of that stuff.
He was so interactive with everything and with everybody that everything on a daily basis is a trigger. Or, I don't really care for going into Walmart, because every time we went into Walmart, the first thing we did was go to the strawberries and the grapes and blueberries, because that's what Judah loved. But I won't go down the toy aisle. Certain things almost pretty much on a daily basis, that is a reminder of Judah or a trigger. Every time I go to Dollar General, I see, or even Walmart, any store, if they have a Paw Patrol or any show that Judah used to like, they have the little lawn chairs coming out now, and Judah had one, and I'm like, oh, Judah would have liked that.
Now, time for one last break for my sponsors.
Do you want to talk about the tree planting and the significance of that park? I know that that park is special to you guys.
Yeah, generally when we took Judah to the park, it was that park. Phil would take Judah down. There's a river, it's called Yellow River, and he wanted to watch the tadpoles or the minnows or whatever, so they fished there. There's, I think, 4 or 5 different play areas within the park, and there's a huge old antique cannon that Judah liked to stand by, and everything about the park. That Judah loved the park. So, and since we took him to that one frequently, I thought that would be the best place for him to have his final resting place, where he had a good majority of his fun other than at home.
That's awesome. You're going to scatter his ashes at the base of the tree?
Yeah, we're going to have the whole dog to place the tree in. We're going to place the tree in the hole and then scatter his ashes in the base and then have it covered. And the tree that was picked, Ginkgo biloba, it's one of the longest living trees. They grow fast, they grow hardy, and they live for a very long time. So I thought that particular tree was suggested to me, and I thought it was a good idea. And then when I saw the picture, I Googled it, see what does it look like when it's in full bloom. And the first thing I saw when I looked at it was it looked like a dandelion. And Judah loves, every time the dandelions would pop up, he always loved because when I was little, my mom would do it, and you take the head or the flower. Mama had a baby and popped out. Yeah. So he always thought that was funny. So he'd always go pick those and have me do it. Or he'd say, "Here, Mommy, here's a flower. Here, Daddy, here's a flower.
Here, you gotta blow this."
Yeah, or else he'll blow the seeds off when they go to seed. When I saw the image of the tree, I was like, that's perfect. And part of the reason why I think we're doing this is because, so I'm not real religious, but I do know the Bible says ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Mm-hmm. So I've always talked to Phil and told him, when I do pass, I want to be cremated. A lot of people have come to me and said, where can we pay our respects to Judah? We have no place. We have Judah in an urn in our home with us and in our necklaces around our neck. But I think that it would be respectable for Judah to have a final resting place, and for people to, if they want to come pay their respects, they can sit alongside the tree. And I think it would help Phil and I and the kids too, that, we have a place that we can go and just talk to them. We're having a wooden plaque engraved. Not exactly sure what will be on it. I think we talked about, I don't want any affiliation with Alan or Mary's name on it. So
His name is Gina Hollett.
Yes, he was Judah Hullett, but legally, unfortunately, he's that last name. So I think maybe we'll just put Judah, maybe loved brother and son, Judah Bubba, because the kids called him Bubba. So maybe we'll put something to that effect on it and then have it posted in front of the tree that way. And we're going to have the tree placed to where, because it sits, the park sits next to a highway. So we'll have it placed to where anytime we drive by, we can see it.
I love that. Well, I'm going to share the links, of course, to the group again and to the event page.
Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate you telling. I can't imagine your position in telling these stories every single day and hearing the detail. So I follow, that I follow you, but there'll be times where I'll listen to some of the stories and there's just so many triggers that I can't finish them just because they're so horrible. But I do try to listen to a good portion of them, but some of them I can't listen. I can't finish all of them just because of the certain triggers, Well,
of course, yeah.
There was one case that you did, and I was like, oh my God, it sounds just like what happened to Judah.
Yeah, that's the really awful part, is there's too many similarities. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I can imagine it would be impossible to hear any of them without seeing those and, those triggers, and it's just going to be awful.
We appreciate that you do it, because without you or people like you to do that, sure, it wouldn't get as much attention and social media is it's a pain in the ass, but it also can be used, like how, you're using or how we're using it to get out there.
That's the important thing. It's definitely challenging, especially, I suffer with depression myself, and this is not exactly the most uplifting subject, but it's so important to me to tell these kids stories, not only to keep their memories alive, but to try and make people understand, you have to watch out for this. You have to understand this, try to keep your eyes open, because if you don't know it, you don't know what to look for. And I know 4 years ago, I had no idea what I was looking for when I first started telling these stories on the blog. But the more I've learned and the more I've heard, I have people tell me that all the time. Well, now I know what to look for. Thank God. That's all I want to do here.
Right. Yep.
And heaven forbid Mary get out of jail and she gets a kid.
They relinquished their rights, and termination of parental rights was filed through the courts. So the boys will be adopted. I can't say a whole lot. What I can say is that the two youngest are together. I'm not counting in the new baby. So the
Right,
two
right.
that were living there are together. And what you do too brings people together. So Ashley and I have become friends because of you connecting us. And it's nice to be able to once in a while talk to somebody about your feelings and know that they know exactly what you're going through.
Yes, I'm so glad. Ashley is an absolute sweetheart, and I'm so glad you guys have connected.
She is, yep. And I'm hearing from other people because of Judah's story, because of what we're trying to do, it has, I guess, kind of kicked in other states for other people to try to. I know in Connecticut they're trying to get Judah's Law passed there. So there's other states that are involved in because of Judah's story and trying to get some laws changed to help better protect these kids. And we didn't do it. We didn't do it by ourselves. We had a lot of help through people in the group and things like that. So
Judah's a superhero.
That's right. He is. Well, he's earned his cape, that's for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. That's awesome.
The more pieces of law out there inspired by Judah, the better.
Yep. I don't think Judah's Law was a very big bill. I think that's why it was so easy and quick to be passed. But
still, it was so important. You guys should have had the right to intervene for him.
Right. I mean, who knows the kids best? The ones that they're living with. We picked up the pieces when Judah came home from a visit. We're the ones who laid with him until he would fall asleep, or read him books every night and cuddled with him and hugged him.
Sure.
The people who are directly involved with the children on a one-on-one basis should definitely have a say-so. And even because we love Judah and wanted to keep him, I made statements several times, and so did Phil. If they could be good parents and still, allow us to spend time with them, if they can get their head out of their ass and be good parents, then by all means. We're not against reunification if it fits.
If it's actually in the best interest of the child, yes.
And we set our greed aside because I was being greedy. I wanted to keep Judah because we loved him. But in the same token, I told them, I know I'm not Judah's biological mother, and Phil knows he's not his biological father. But at the end of the day, that's what Judah knows us as. But anything that happens from here on out, know that you guys are responsible and know that he was well taken care of with us. So anything that happened after that, they know what they did and they know what hand they played, and they know that they were warned. They know that I told them several times. I've posted the emails or whatnot on Judah's page. Warning them, telling them that we feared that this was going to happen. And the really fucking sad and pathetic thing is that Phil kept telling me the days leading up to Judah going to them, what if, because he had watched the Gabriel Fernandez trials. I couldn't watch it. I couldn't get past the initial nurse telling the condition that Gabriel was in. And Phil had already watched it, and he says, what if? I said, just stop. We're not going there. That's not going to happen. And exactly what he predicted and exactly what he said happened. I said, I know that they're going to fuck up because we were told if DCS messes up, we'll get Judah back. I said, just give it the 6 months. I guarantee they're going to mess up. And they did. But little did we know that DCS closed the case.
Right.
They didn't even catch it. They didn't care.
They didn't catch it because the case was closed.
Right. And they shouldn't have closed it back. I mean, it wasn't even done.
None of it went the way it was supposed to or should have. And I know that's what you guys are pushing towards change for. So keep that up. And that's so important too. DCS needs to be reformed in a big way.
Yeah, they need to be held accountable somehow.
Yeah.
They're untouchable right now, and that is so sickening.
I think I told you in our first interview that even if they don't serve jail time, I just want people to know who they are. If they're walking down the street and they know, hey, she had a part in Judah not being with us any longer. Or if they're walking in the grocery store, this person had part in what happened to Judah. And the fact that they're still employed just is completely sickening and appalling. It's ridiculous because those are people that are overseeing the safety of other children. Well, you already failed X amount of children. Why are you still employed?
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to just plain old negligence, I get it. They are way overworked, and that is certainly not the individual's fault. But when it comes to, well, you know what, I saw this and I thought, I don't want to deal with it today. That's a whole different situation.
Or putting fictitious things or leaving things out of his case file, like that supposed bruise that was on Judah's back. I told DCS when we got Judah, I don't know if this is a bruise or a birthmark. It was the first night we had him. I went to give him a bath. He had a mark on his back. I wasn't sure. So I did take a picture, sent it to the caseworker, told her I'd watch it. Ended up being a birthmark.
and he was at a visit, and Mary told the caseworker that Judah supposedly told them that I kicked him in his back or I punched him in his back or something. And he was supposed to be home from visit at a certain time. He was not there. I did not hear anything from the caseworker or the visit supervisor. I'm calling. Nobody's answering. I'm thinking there's an accident. I'm freaking out, not knowing what's going on. Why Judah's 2 hours late from returning from visit. Then I get a call from one of the caseworker supervisors asking if I'm home. I said, yeah, I'm waiting on Judah. What's going on? We'll be there in a minute. They pull up, show me a picture of Judah's back. I'm like, yeah, that's his birthmark. No, Judah said it was a bruise that he told Mary you kicked him or punched him or something. And I said, okay, well, you need to look in his case file because there should be an image in there of that same exact mark on his back from when he was 4 months old when we first got placement of him. It's the exact same mark. And they're like, no, he's going to stay. So instead of putting him in rescue, they placed Judah for 2 weeks with Mary and Alan.
Wow.
Took him away from us for 2 weeks and placed him with Mary and Alan. And I told them, I said, okay, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, that mark's still going to be there and you'll realize that it's a birthmark. So then 2 weeks later, they said we could come pick Judah up at the DCS office in Michigan City. And I went there and the caseworker told me to stay parked out in the parking lot because she didn't want a confrontation. She knew that Mary was afraid of me. So I got there and I stood outside my vehicle and I saw Mary, the caseworker, and Judah standing by the door. Mary knelt down and acted like, the doting, I love you, I'm going to miss you, give him a kiss. He didn't care. He was staring at me the entire time. Oh. She started walking off to her car. The caseworker went to grab Judah's hand and he kind of pulled it away from her and ran across the parking lot and jumped into my arms and hugged me so tight. The caseworker finally wobbled her big rear end over to me and she, as Judah's hugging me and snuggling up to me, she says, remember, this is temporary. Yeah. She knew that he loved us. She knew that he called us mommy and daddy. She could see how he was latched onto me. I could have moved my arms and he would have just hung there. Yeah. And she just walks up and she's like, remember, this is temporary. I get Judah in the car, buckled up in his car seat, and he just kept staring at me. Always used the rearview mirror, and I tilted the rearview mirror so Judah could see me and I could see him, and we would have conversations. And he just kept staring at me and playing with a piece of string. But the way he was looking at me was like, where have you been? Why were you not there?
That's the worst part.
God, I know what goes through your heads as far as that goes. Always questioning, what did he think? But he knows now that you didn't give him up or leave him behind. It wasn't your choice. And I just hope that, no matter what beliefs anyone has, I just like to cling to that, that he knows now.
I'd like to hope so, but at the end of the day, I think Phil and I both agree that we think that he died not knowing that he died thinking that it was his fault or that we didn't want him or that we didn't love him. And like I said, God knows what they said to him. So I think that eats at us both every day because even though he knew that we loved him, we still think that he may not have known. I think he maybe have blamed himself, that he may have done something wrong.
Sure. But of course, I think he spent so much time with you guys too, that all of what you instilled in him compared to whatever bullshit they were telling him, yeah. I think he would have clung to everything that you taught him.
Thank you so much to Gina and Phil for talking with me about the updates to Judah's story and for reminding all of us how important it is to keep saying Judah's name and making positive changes in his memory. I'll continue posting updates on my Facebook page as I get them.
No one, dude. No one, dude, what?
No one, dude. Nobody, dude. Nobody, dude.
I love you, sissy.
Love you, sissy, dude.
Say sweet dreams.
I'll see you, dream, dude.
You're a turd. Say peace out, homie.
Peace out, homie.
My sources for this episode were ABC WRTV Indianapolis, 13 WTHR, the Indiana General Assembly website, the Times of Northwest Indiana, the South Bend Tribune, the Fulton County Post, WSBT 22, the Indiana My Case portal, the Justice for Judah Facebook group, and Gina and Phil Hullett. That's it for this week. Join me next week for another episode. If you like the show, please follow or subscribe to Suffer the Little Children on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast listening app. And please leave me a 5-star rating and a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. visit the website at sufferthelittlechildrenpod.com. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/stlcpod, where you can become a patron for rewards ranging from a shout-out by name on the show to bonus content and exclusive gifts. You can also support the show at ko-fi.com/stlcpod. Follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Suffer the Little Children Pod and on TikTok at STLCpod. View photos related to today's episode on Facebook. For more stories like the one you heard today, visit sufferthelittlechildrenblog.com. This podcast is researched, written, hosted, edited, and produced by Lane. Intro theme music is by Dream Note Music, and all music for the show is licensed from audiojungle.net. For more information about preventing or reporting child abuse, visit childhelp.org or call your area's child abuse hotline. And remember, if you see something, say something.